Cool. So yeah, welcome again, everyone. Thanks a lot for coming along to this presentation on post-16 transitions for young people with special educational needs and disabilities. My name is Mikey Lynham, and I'm the Children and Young Persons Worker at Lambeth Information Advice and Support Service. So I work directly with young people aged 16 to 25 who have special educational needs. I'm joined by two of my colleagues today, Anita Bay and Chris White. They're both the service co-leads for the Lambeth IS service, and they work directly with the parents of children who have special educational needs. They'll be helping me to answer questions at the end of the presentation. So to let you know, as we go through the presentation, if you've got any questions, please type them into the chat box, and we will kind of come back to them at the end. Anita will be keeping an eye on the chat, and yeah, we'll read them out and we'll answer them as a team. I've also asked speakers from several post-16 settings to come along and talk about their service today. I'll hand over to them in the final segment of the presentation, and I'll ask them to speak about their setting and the offer very briefly, just for 3 minutes. But I'm hoping that by doing that, everyone will kind of get a flavour of some of the different post-16 options that are out there in Lambeth, and I think it gives a sense of what's available in some of the neighbouring boroughs as well. So yeah, thanks to everyone who agreed to come along. So I'm expecting that the presentation will last for about an hour, and then there'll be kind of 15 to 20 minutes of questions. So I'm going to speak for about 30 to 40 minutes. I'm expecting that the post-16 speakers will last for about 20 minutes, and then there'll be some time for questions after that. But yeah, the core of what I'm going to speak about today is the transitions process for two groups of students with special educational needs. One of those is students who are on special educational needs support, and the other group of students are students with education, health and care plans. So they're both groups of students who have special educational needs, but the transitions process is different for each of those groups. But yeah, before I get onto that, I just wanted to say a little bit more about the Lambeth IS service. So we provide information, advice and support to parents and carers of children with special educational needs and disabilities, and we also work with young people and children directly. We're an impartial service, which means that we kind of give advice and information on the law. We generally don't take sides when conflicts are when there are conflicts. We just kind of give advice and support children, parents, young people, and we're also a confidential service. So we are technically part of Lambeth Council. We're what's called an arm's length service. So we operate with a degree of independence, and we also don't share information with kind of other local authority departments unless there's a safeguarding issue. So that's what we mean when we say we're confidential. Now, every local authority in England has an IS service. They're required to have one by law, and we're the service for Lambeth, and we only work with families that are resident in Lambeth. So kind of, yeah, I guess parents and young people who live let's say in Southwark and go to college or school in Lambeth would belong to the Southwark IS. And yeah, I've said before that I work directly with young people. As a service, we work with young people up to the age of 25. That limit is set out in the legislation that we kind of follow as a service. So a lot of our work is based around the Children and Families Act 2014, which is a piece of legislation. And yeah, we kind of refer back to a lot of kind of associated bits of legislation, regulations and guidance. Another big one that we refer back to is the Special Educational Needs and Disability Code of Practice 2015. So I have included the contact details of me and Anita and Chris, my colleagues here. I'll also include those on a slide at the end, but yeah, you're welcome to get in touch for any info, advice and support. And I guess, yeah, to give a bit of a sense of the type of things that we advise on, and the sort of support that we provide. We're able to advise on issues such as support in schools, EHC plans, exclusions, home to school transport, and the Special Educational Needs and Disability Tribunal, which is a sort of panel of judges in the UK that hear SEN related cases. And where relevant, we're also able to provide support to students and parents to help understand letters, filling out forms, help attending meetings. So where that's appropriate and relevant. So yeah, I guess to kind of distill what we do as a service, that again is set out in the Children and Families Act, and I'll read you the bit of the act that's sort of relevant for us, because I guess our role as an organisation is to ensure that kind of those principles are held up, and parents, young people, children have access to information that they need to. So the Children and Families Act makes clear that local authorities, when they're carrying out their functions in relation to young people and children with SEN, they must have regard to the views, wishes and feelings of the child or young person and the child's parents, the importance of the child or young person and the child's parents participating as fully as possible in decisions and being provided with the information and support necessary to enable participation in those decisions, and the need to support the child or young person and the child's parents in order to facilitate the development of the child or young person and to help them achieve the best possible educational and other outcomes, preparing them effectively for adulthood. So to kind of summarise that, I guess, our role is to help children, young people, parents know their rights, have a voice and take ownership over processes that affect them. So to kind of move on to post-16 transitions, I think I want to start at the beginning by just explaining what a post-16 transition is. I'm sure it's quite clear to a lot of people, but by post-16 transition, it's a sort of it's a transition that's defined in law. It means transition from year 11 in secondary school or key stage 4 into post-16 education. And there are lots of different post-16 options available to young people, but they kind of come under the same group of categories, and those they could be sixth form, colleges, supported internships, apprenticeships or traineeships. Colleges include kind of specialist settings, as do some of the other categories, but the speakers we'll hear from later on have provisions that fall into those categories. Now, the key takeaway, it's quite a simple takeaway, I think, for this presentation, is that a good transition into post-16 is far more likely with planning. That's obviously the case for all students, although I think it's particularly important for students with special educational needs. And in fact, I think for all students, but again, particularly for students with SEN, it would be great to have a good idea of where, if they had a good idea of where they wanted to go in post-16 by year 10, by the end of year 10 really at the latest. And the reason for that, I think, and the reason for needing to plan ahead is that students with special educational needs and disabilities often have additional considerations to make on top of the considerations all students might take when they're choosing a post-16 setting. So there are those usual considerations of aspirations, favourite subjects, career path, entry requirements, distance of travel. But then there are additional considerations to make, like support available in settings or potential challenges travelling to and from settings, challenges relating to a young person's special educational needs. And yeah, every year, kind of as the children and young persons worker, and I know Chris and Anita as well, I kind of work with young people who haven't thought about where they want to go for post-16 until very late in the game. So even kind of August, September of their post-16 year. And yeah, it always looks very stressful to be in that position, and there's room for a lot of disappointment, and there's the risk of kind of not being in education for a while. So I think that early planning is important for everyone. So a couple of other legal bits before I kind of talk about those two groups of students that I previously mentioned. It's important to know that when a child leaves year 11, when they finish school, there's a transition of legal status. So when a young person is still in education under the age of 16, when they're in kind of year 11 or equivalent, they're classed as a child, and when they move out of compulsory education. So after the age of 16, they become a young person. Now, the transition age is kind of different for different bits of law. We're referring to education law here. In social care law, there's the transition from child to adult at 18, but the important point of transition for education law is from kind of 15 to 16, once a young person becomes 16 and leaves school. Because, yeah, once a child becomes a young person, they then have the final decision-making power when it comes to educational choices and discussing SEM-related matters. And yeah, young people, once a child becomes a young person, it's them that has the power to lodge an appeal with the Special Educational Needs and Disability Tribunal when they don't agree with local authority decisions. So before, it's a parent where a child is concerned. Once a child becomes a young person, once they reach the age of 16 and leave school, it's them that has that power and responsibility. Now, importantly, that doesn't apply if a young person does not have mental capacity. So if a young person isn't able to weigh up, to kind of understand the decision and weigh up the different elements of a decision, but that's a very high bar. It's a very high bar when if a young person doesn't have mental capacity, there's a high bar to reach in showing that. Generally, a young person, in most cases, a young person will have mental capacity, and they have the decision-making power, even if parents or professionals think that a decision that they're making is unwise. So if a young person decides that they want to study gardening, but you as a parent know that they hate plants and hate getting their hands dirty, it doesn't matter. You can give advice, but as far as the law is concerned, they have the final decision-making power once they've become a young person. And the final bit of law, just to say that education law says that once a child becomes a young person, once they're in that 16 to 18 age group, they have to stay in educational training until their 18th birthday. So there are several options available. Young people can go into full-time study at a post-16 setting, so approximately 18 hours of study per week. They can go into full-time employment or volunteering while in part-time educational training, or they could go into an apprenticeship or traineeship. It's worth saying that that law hasn't been enforced as of yet. So if a child misses school and there's not a kind of good explanation, and there's after a kind of the process around that has been followed, it can end with a parent being taken to court. No such kind of enforcement action is taken for young people aged between 16 and 18. So I just have some water. So yeah, getting on to this key distinction that I've already mentioned, I'm expecting that everyone in the presentation today, or most people at least, is either a parent of a child or young person who's approaching a kind of post-16 transition, or you're a professional that's working with students who will transition into post-16 at some point. And if you're in that position and you're supporting those young people, from the off, it's important to understand which of the following two groups they fall into. So there are students who are on special educational needs support in schools, and then there are students with education, health and care plans. Both have special educational needs, meaning that in order to kind of make expected progress, special educational provision needs to be put in place for them. But the transitions process for both of those groups is a little different. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about the differences between these two groups and how to identify what group a young person with special educational needs falls into. And then I'll talk about the transitions process for each group. So the two groups really are kind of defined in opposition to one another. All of these students will require some sort of special educational provision in school. By special educational provision, I mean, I guess to give some examples, that could be one-to-one support in the classroom, it could be group support, various general therapies like art, Lego or drama, therapy, or it could be a specific therapy like speech and language therapy or occupational therapy. Could also be kind of schemes like buddying or circle of friends or other social skills groups. But yeah, young people with SEN will require some special educational provision. Now, for students on SEN support, it will be their school, college or setting that organises that support and puts it in place. That they will be responsible for overseeing and coordinating the support. So yeah, schools and colleges have a duty to identify and support children and young people with SEN. The law says that schools and colleges need to use their best endeavours in order to do this, and that means that they need to do everything that can be kind of reasonably expected of them to ensure that students with SEN aren't disadvantaged because of their special educational needs. Now, yeah, in a setting, it will be, at least in schools, it will be the Special Educational Needs Coordinator, or SENCO, who organises SEN support for students. And I guess the final couple of things to say about this. Each school is given what's called an SEN notional funding budget in order to support young people with SEN. And there's a sort of cycle that schools have to go through in order to do this, and that's called plan, assess, do, review, meaning that they need to plan for support and put it in place, review it, see if it's working and change it, and there needs to be this kind of ongoing work with young people who are on SEN support. So that's SEN support, and now education, health and care plans. So an EHCP is a legal document, and it describes a child or young person's special educational needs, as well as the support they need and the outcomes they would like to achieve. There are kind of several sections. There are 11 sections actually within an EHCP, and they all do different things. But yeah, I think that the sections that we look at most are around kind of needs, provision and outcomes. And now, importantly, while the school is responsible for planning and delivering SEN support, an EHCP is maintained by a local authority. So in our case, Lambeth Council, and the EHCP will will tell a school, setting, college, whatever it is. It will tell them what the young person's needs are and the provision that's required to meet those needs. So it's something more of a kind of instruction booklet which tells schools and colleges what they need to do. And if provision is specified in the plan, then the school, college or other educational provider must deliver it as specified. So and it's really important that provision is specified in plan, so that it's really clear what schools, colleges, other settings need to do. So yeah, I think a couple more points. EHCPs enable some students to stay in educational training until 25, but yeah, you can generally stay in education until 25 when you have one. And relevant for kind of this post-16 transitions process, EHCPs can give parents and young people a kind of expanded choice of what school or setting they're going to attend. So now that we've kind of split apart those two groups of students, I'll talk about the transitions process for each of them, and I'll start with SEN support, students on SEN support, and then I'll talk about EHCPs. Now, the transitions process for students on SEN support, I mean, the information here is really quite underwhelming, because it's actually the same process near enough as any other student without an education, health and care plan. So they'll apply for colleges, sixth forms, apprenticeships or traineeships through the usual application route. So that will often be on the websites of colleges or sixth forms, or on a kind of online apprenticeship listing, kind of jobs boards, whatever it is. Now, while yeah, the process is the same as all students without EHCPs, so the same as students who don't have any SEN, it is still important to be making these extra considerations, and there is this extra need, I think, to plan ahead and make sure that yeah, things are in place. So if a student is in year 11 now on SEN support, I'd really recommend that they're kind of making applications at about this time. And for anyone who's watching this kind of after the presentation has been delivered, it's now October 2021. So yeah, kind of September, October time is the right time to be making applications, and I would be applying to several courses just so students can hedge their bets. So if they don't get onto courses 1 and 2, maybe they can get onto course 3. Now, yeah, the big question to answer for students on SEN support is what support will be in place once they get to their post-16 setting. So I think, yeah, schools will have a SENCO, as I've said. Colleges and other providers won't necessarily have a SENCO, but they must still have a named individual in the college who's responsible for coordinating SEN support. And it will be really important to identify who that individual is. While transitioning to a setting, let's say you're supporting a student who's going to transition next year, I think it's a really good idea to make sure that the SENCO or named individual is aware of that young person and their support needs early. So ideally before they get there, but certainly once they arrive in September. So yeah, speak to the SENCO or named individual in advance. And yeah, the colleges, sixth forms, other providers have the same duties that schools do when it comes to identifying special educational needs and putting the necessary provision in place. That kind of legal point that they need to use their best endeavours to ensure that young people aren't disadvantaged because of their special educational needs still stands, and colleges get that SEN notional funding budget that I previously mentioned to support students. So yeah, I think that there are two groups of students, I suppose, with SEN support that are going to arrive at a college. Group number one is those who have received SEN support before they've had identified learning needs in school, and so it's then when you want to be getting in touch with a SENCO or named individual in advance and asking them to carry out an assessment of learning needs. There might obviously also be young people who have unidentified special educational needs before they go to college, and college or sixth form or whatever post-16 setting should have systems in place to identify which students are who might have special educational needs, and they should be assessing and making sure that they get the right support in place. So the support that sixth forms and colleges and other post-16 providers can offer for young people on SEN support kind of varies from setting to setting. I'd say all of that on the proviso that they still need to be using their best endeavours to put the right support in place. But what that looks like exactly will vary from college to college, and I think it's important to yeah, find out about that when young people are interested in post-16 settings. And yeah, the final point about SEN support in kind of post-16 settings, I guess, is that yeah, they should be kind of making applications for education, health and care plans where SEN support isn't adequate for a young person, or it's not enough, and special educational provision is required in accordance with an EHC plan. I guess the two kind of real situations where you would expect that to be the case are when a young person is being supported by a college and that support is working, but the college is using more than its notional funding budget for that student to support them. The other instance is where the college is putting all of the support in place that it can, but the student still isn't making expected progress. In those two instances, you'll expect sixth forms, colleges, post-16 settings to be making applications for EHC plans. So yeah, be aware of that. So yeah, now I'll talk about the transitions process for students with education, health and care plans. So yeah, as I said, the process for students on SEN support is kind of the same as everyone else. It's students who have EHCPs that really have a kind of particular transitions process that I think it's important to be aware of. Now, the way that the process is different is students with EHC plans can go to the local authority and ask them to consult with educational settings, post-16 providers, rather than making applications to those providers directly. And in that situation, the local authority will go off and communicate with the post-16 settings themselves. And after an exchange with those settings, they might make the decision to name one of the settings in section I of a young person's plan. And this, I'll talk about this in more detail in a moment, but all of this happens as part of the Year 11 annual review process. I've already said that EHCPs are split into 11 sections. The relevant section here is section I, and if you look at section I of any child or young person's plan, it will tell you the setting, or at least the type of setting that the young person should attend. And yeah, in order to request a setting as part of the Year 11 annual review process, young people again would really ideally know where they want to go in Year 10. But that they should know by the end of the autumn term for sure, so September, November, December time, and at the very latest they'll know at the start of the winter term. Now, I think the thing, I'll emphasize this again later, but the thing to emphasize about the post-16 transitions process for students with EHCPs is that proactivity is really important to make best use of the process. Some parents and children might have gone through the Year 6 to 7 transitions process with an EHCP, but if you can kind of remember that, then just be aware that the Year 6 to 7 transitions process is way more heavily managed by the local authority, and it's less heavily managed for post-16 transitions. So it's really important, whether you're a parent or a professional working with children or young people with special educational needs, that you understand the transitions process and what's expected at each stage. It can be a headache, and it can be quite a kind of long process. But I think especially if you're a teacher, there's a real opportunity to kind of help this process along. So to say a little bit more about the annual review, the annual review is a yearly process where parents, children, young people, teachers, other professionals come together to discuss the EHCP, and they'll think about whether any updates are required to the plan, whether it's relevant, whether the needs listed in the planner are still up to date, whether the provision is effective, and there'll be opportunities to update other parts, making sure that outcomes are relevant and achievable, for example. Now it says in law that this meeting has to happen, or this process has to happen every year, and that's laid out in the Children and Families Act, like kind of everything is on education, health and care plans, really, for the most part. So for the post-16 transitions process, there are two pretty important annual reviews. Both of them are very important. So there's the Year 11 annual review, which is this opportunity to ask the local authority to consult with chosen settings, and when the settings will make a decision about whether or not they can support, and ultimately the local authority will decide whether or not to name a setting. But the Year 10 annual review process is also super important. That's because during the Year 11 annual review process, when the local authority is going out and consulting with settings, they're going to be sending the most up-to-date plan to settings. Now, because during the Year 11 process, the plan will be going through the process of being updated, the Year 10 plan will actually be often the most up-to-date plan. And that means that the Year 10 annual review is enormously important, because it's this opportunity to make sure that everything is up to date before plans are sent out to settings in Year 11. And now, if an out-of-date plan that doesn't reflect the present needs of a child or young person is sent to prospective settings, they might think that they're not able to support the student, when actually, if they looked at the kind of present needs and the present provision that's required, they would find that they actually can support them. So yeah, Year 10 just as important, and it's also an opportunity to determine the post-16 options that the child at that time might like to attend. yeah, there should be a kind of discussion about this, and some of the chosen options should be, or the prospective options should be pinned down and written in the paperwork. So I guess, yeah, for any teachers that are kind of listening in, I think it's really important to make sure that that discussion is on the agenda in the Year 10 annual review process, because there's a concrete foundation then to make decisions once the Year 11 review comes around. So to talk a little bit more about the Year 11 annual review process, the review process takes place between September and March of Year 11, so that sort of first portion of Year 11. Now, the law says that it has to be completed by the 31st of March. Now, the 31st of March deadline exists to give parents and young people kind of a good window, a 5-month window, to take advice and consider next steps if the outcome of the annual review is undesirable in some way. So let's say that the setting that they wanted to be named wasn't named. And yeah, there are kind of several kind of routes that children and young people and parents can take in this instance, and that includes kind of mediation. It includes lodging an appeal with the Sen Tribunal. But yeah, well, if the outcome is undesirable, we'd kind of recommend that you take advice and think about next steps, and we're kind of, yeah, Lambeth IS is able to support with that. And yeah, the other thing to note, I think, about what the 31st of March deadline means about the annual review meeting is that the annual review meeting needs to actually take place a good while before the 31st of March deadline. Now, there's a kind of a misconception sometimes, I think, that an annual review is just this annual review meeting, so this time every year when professionals come together, but there's actually a whole process around that. So there are steps that happen before an annual review meeting, and then there are steps that occur afterwards, and the process after the meeting can actually take anything up to 12 weeks to complete. So in order for the 31st of March deadline to be met, the annual review meeting, the deadline for the annual review meeting is January 6th. So really it kind of needs to happen by the end of the autumn term. But yeah, when it comes to asking the local authority to consult with settings, there are 3 real opportunities throughout the Year 11 annual review process to do it. Before the annual review meeting, paperwork will be sent to the parent and to the child who's going to become a young person to give their kind of views on their plan. There's an opportunity in the young person's views form, which is sent out as part of this, to express a preference on settings, and you can ask the local authority to consult with them. The next opportunity is during the annual review meeting itself. So when there's the meeting of children, young person, parent, professionals, the young person can make explicit that they want the local authority to consult with X, Y, Z. And there's a final opportunity to make these views known as part of the annual review process, which is when the local authority outlines the amendments that it will make to the plan after the annual review meeting. So after an annual review, there are actually 3 potential outcomes. One is that the plan stays the same, one is that the plan is amended, and one is that the plan is ceased. Generally, a plan is going to be amended before when a young person goes into Post-16, because Section I needs to be amended at least. So we'll assume that it's being amended, kind of as a result of this. If it is amended, the young person will be given the chance to make their views known about the potential amendments, and they can ask for the local authority to consult them. Now, my advice would be to take the first opportunity to ask the local authority to consult with settings, because I think the earlier this process starts, the better. But I think to just be absolutely sure that the consultation is going to go ahead and everyone, the consultations will go ahead and everyone's clear on what a young person's want, our young person wants, I would actually take all three opportunities to let the local authority know what settings a young person would like them to consult with. Now, yeah, once a young person has asked the local authority to consult with settings, the local authority will send the EHCP, remember the year 10 EHCP, to College A, Sixth Form B, Specialist Setting C, and then each of them will come back and will let the local authority know whether or not they're able to meet the needs of the student, and they'll let them know whether or not they're able to provide them with an education. And once it receives a response from those settings, the local authority will decide whether to name one of the settings in section I. Now, I've included this quite kind of complicated flowchart, which has quite a bit of information on, but I just wanted to kind of draw your attention to a couple of points. So this is the process following the annual review meeting. So this is the year 11 annual review, and it kind of gives a breakdown of what happens once the meeting has taken place. And I just want to highlight those three opportunities for young people to make their views known, and to express where they would like the local authority to consult. So once in the paperwork before the annual review meeting, once during the annual review meeting, and then after that, after the annual review meeting has taken place, the local authority has 4 weeks to decide on the outcome of the annual review. As I said, you'll often be expecting them to amend after the year 11 annual review. They will then send the proposed amendments to the parent and young person, and there'll be 15 days following this point to request any changes, to request any further amendments, and to ask the local authority to consult with settings. And yeah, I guess just to highlight again, the 31st of March deadline. Sorry, I've been intending to use a laser pointer throughout this whole section. Here's point 1, point 2, point 3. Yeah, just to highlight again, there's the 31st of March deadline for getting everything finalised. That's the point at which a setting needs to be named in the plan. Kind of working backwards, there's 12 weeks after the annual review meeting. So the latest the annual review meeting can take place is the 6th of Jan. Now, importantly, when the local authority makes a decision about whether or not to name one of the settings it's consulted with, it can't make any old decision about whether or not to name the setting in the plan. It needs to be guided by the law, and there are basically 3 exceptions. There are 3 exceptions. So the local authority has to name a setting unless one of these 3 exceptions applies, and they can be found in section 39(4) of the Children and Families Act, if anyone is interested. So the law says that when a young person parent requests that a setting is named, the local authority must name it unless one of the 3 exceptions apply. These are: the school or other institution requested is unsuitable for the age, aptitude, or ability or special educational needs of the child or young person concerned, or the attendance of the child or young person at the requested school or other institution would be incompatible with the provision of efficient education for others or the efficient use of resources. Now, importantly, if the local authority decides not to name a placement, it must show that one of those exceptions apply, but it can't simply assert that the exception applies. It needs to make a robust case to show that the exception applies, and there's normally a pretty high bar for establishing that a specific exception applies. So, for example, if a young person say that they've kind of said that they wanted to go to College A, and the local authority has come back and not named College A, saying that the attendance of the young person at the setting would be incompatible with the provision of efficient education for others, it must describe specifically who that would affect, why it would affect them, why kind of accepting the young person in question would be incompatible with the efficient education of others. And they also need to show why reasonable steps can't be made to prevent this incompatibility. So they need to make quite a robust case to show that a young person can't attend a setting. So just a couple more things on this. So when the local authority names an institution within the further education sector in section I, so we've got to this point where the local authority has decided to name College A, say, the institution at that point must accept the student. And that applies even if during the consultation process, the post-16 setting indicated that it felt it couldn't meet the needs of the student. In this kind of dynamic, the local authority has the final word. So if they decide that they're going to name a setting, that setting must accept the student. And finally, I've said this before, but just to say it again, if as a parent or a young person, you're dissatisfied with the outcome of the annual review, including the naming of an institution in section I, we can kind of support you to consider your options and support you to take next steps. A final, I guess, nod to the importance of proactivity. Again, kind of parents, young people, be aware that there is a need to kind of be on it to make sure that this process kind of all happens as it should. So I would recommend that you're kind of prompting the setting or local authority where a student is out of school. If a student's out of school, it's the local authority that will convene the annual review meeting to make sure that both the year 10 and 11 annual reviews go ahead. And I've spoken about the various ways that you can express a preference for settings and ask the local authority to consult. I'd recommend that kind of parents, young people also write directly to the transitions lead at Lambeth Council. So at the present time, October 2021, the transitions lead in the SEN team is Antoinette Davis, and I've included her email here. And finally, do make sure you're chasing the SEN team to keep updated on the status of consultations, and do bear in mind the statutory deadline. So that 31st of March deadline is really important. If things haven't happened, if you haven't got a kind of finalised plan by that point with a setting named in it, it's time to really start chasing and do contact our service as well. The very kind of final kind of couple of slides on post-16 transitions for students with EHCPs. There is still for some students, they haven't decided kind of what setting they would like to attend by the time the annual review meeting has come and the annual review process has come and gone. And if that happens, that student is still able to get in contact with the local authority and ask them to consult with settings. However, be aware that the annual review process has these kind of statutory, so legal deadlines built into it that the local authority has to adhere to. If you just ask the local authority to consult once the annual review is passed, the local authority will no longer be held to those statutory deadlines. So to make sure that they are, and to kind of guarantee that things happen as quick as they can, I'd recommend requesting an emergency annual review with the local authority. So annual reviews do happen every year, but at any point you're welcome to turn around and ask the local authority to organise an emergency annual review if you're a parent or a young person. And yeah, finally, it is possible for young people to go ahead and apply to settings as normal when they have EHCPs, and they can make the setting aware once they've started in September. I'd come across young people who do this, but this kind of really isn't advised, because let's say a student starts at setting in September, makes the college aware that they have an EHCP and need support, takes a few weeks, maybe a month to get the support in place, and they've lost out on support. And that's assuming that they let the college know as soon as they start at the college that they have an EHCP. So I generally advise that students follow the correct process. and also you do need an EHCP to apply for some settings, and so you'd need to follow the consultation process. So yeah, I said a little bit earlier about the support that's in place for students with SEN support in sixth forms and colleges. For students with EHCPs, the college, sixth form, whatever provision it is, like the school, is responsible for, has to basically deliver the provision that's set out in section F of a student's plan. So section F is where all of the provision is listed. Colleges, sixth forms, other post-16 providers have to deliver that provision as it's specified. And I nodded to this earlier, but again, that's why it's really important that provision in section F of the plan is really well specified, so there can be no doubt around what support should be being received. Cool. So yeah, that's it around the process. I will kind of come back around to questions if anyone has got any questions about it. But for the time being, we'll move on to talk about post-16 options. So I've got a little bit to say, but for the most part, I'm going to be handing over to some of the people from post-16 organisations that have joined us. Just a couple of points to note. Lambeth Council have a post-16 guide on its local offer page, so I would really recommend that that you have a look at that, because there's a good kind of list of some of the different options available. Kind of general tips when looking into sixth forms, colleges, other options. Students, young people should obviously have a look at whether or not they offer subjects that they're interested in, and they should look very closely at entry requirements. Provisions will normally have general entry requirements, and then they might have specific requirements to get onto certain subjects. If you have even if you have an EHCP, if you don't meet the entry requirements for a course, you can't get on it. And yeah, when looking at provisions, do also look into try and find out information about the special educational provision that's an offer for students with on SEN support. So contact the SENCO or named individual about that. And then yeah, do go to open days. They run throughout the year. It's October now, obviously, for people kind of listening in later. Yeah, I think I looked on the Lambeth College website. I think that they've already had some open days run, but they certainly run as early as sort of September or October. So get on them quickly and try and have a look around. If you miss an open day or a setting doesn't offer one, then get in contact with the SENCO or another named individual or whoever it might be, and ask if you can have a look around. I know plenty of settings are glad for students to come and visit. Now, I'll talk about some of the different options and what they entail. I haven't actually got anyone from sixth forms to speak, because I wanted to focus more on sort of specialist options. But for anyone who doesn't know, sixth forms generally have a kind of academic focus. A levels and BTECs are the key qualifications. It's the typical route for students to take if they want to go to university. It's by no means the only route. Students can move on from college to university. You can do apprenticeships all the way up to PhD level. There's lots of routes to get to university, but sixth forms are, I guess, the most kind of academic, offer the most kind of academic subjects. If you want to have a look at the different sixth forms in Lambeth, you can go on to the government compare school performance table, which lists all of the settings in the borough. You can find the tables for Southwark, Wandsworth, other neighbouring boroughs by googling. And then yeah, I'm going to hand over to Lambeth College in just a minute. But yeah, I guess to speak about colleges in the same way that I did with sixth forms. So colleges will generally have a more vocational focus with courses including MBQs, sitting guilds and BTECs. Some subjects are mainly class-based, but plenty give the opportunity to be more hands-on. So catering, hairdressing, beauty, construction. You know, there are plenty of options that enable students to be kind of on their feet, perhaps more than the academic options at sixth form. So I'm now going to hand over to Diana from Lambeth College, if she's in the meeting. Hold on, let me have a look. Are you around, Diana? If not, I'll hand over to someone else. I think Anne-Marie might be coming along as well. Okay, I don't think that we've got anyone from Lambeth College who's come along. Okay, I'll come back to Lambeth College if they're around later on. But for the time being, I'll move on. Cool. So yeah, I guess what I can say about Lambeth College, for anyone who's kind of interested, I'd recommend getting in contact with Diana Shockness or Anne-Marie Sapkowska, who are the two kind of learning support leads in the college, and I can send on their details afterwards. But I guess a couple of key things to know is that Lambeth College is quite particular in that it has a big kind of resource base for students with SEN, and there is a portion of the college that's specifically for young people with EHCPs. So they support young people with EHCPs throughout the college. But yeah, there is a kind of a base specifically for young people with plans. I guess, yeah, have a look on the website for potential options. I did also invite along South Thames College today, who weren't able to make it, but I guess two of the Lambeth College, South Thames College are certainly two of the closest colleges to Lambeth. Lambeth College is obviously in Lambeth, South Thames is just across in Wandsworth. But yeah, to talk a little bit about kind of specialist post-16 options, they are programs specifically for young people with education, health and care plans. And yeah, they'll often kind of run a range of programs, and they include supported internships. Now, I've got a few people along from different organisations to kind of talk about their specialist offer. So the first is Roots and Shoots. So I can see that Roots and Shoots are here. Let me ask you to unmute, and then hopefully you can speak.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hey, how you doing, Sam?
I'm very well, thanks. I've got a little presentation. Can I screen share that with you?
Yeah, let me have a look. Just bear with me for a minute. So the issue is, if I can only do it by making you host, but I think that's going to stop me recording the presentation. So
it probably will. Well, let me simply tell you about Roots and Shoots, and I can read from my slides if you don't mind.
That's great. Cheers, Sam.
So Roots and Shoots, we're based in Kennington on Walnut Tree Walk. So if you know Kennington Park and Waterloo, we're about halfway up the road. We have a website, rootsandshoots.org.uk, if you'd like to know more about us. But the nicest things you can find about us are on our Instagram account, which is Roots and Shoots 1982, the year that we started. So Roots and Shoots is coming up to its 40th year. So we've been quite a substantial part of Lambeth for quite a long time. Myself, not me personally, I've only been here about 4 years, 3-4 years. But what we do have are a couple of options for students who have education, health and care plans. We have a study programme of level 1 qualifications that's available for 16 to 24-year-olds. It's approximately 16 hours a week, so it's a full-time college education, and they're all accredited courses. And our other option is a pre-supported internship for 19 to 24-year-olds who have an EHC plan. That's again 16 hours a week, so it's full-time as a college course goes, but it's centered more on work experience and work placements. Now, just to be really clear, why we call it a pre-supported internship. Internships, by definition, are usually with one employer in one place. And some of our students, because we've been doing pre-supported internships for about 4 years, have found it really difficult to think about the kind of job that they would like, or the kind of place they would like to work. So we devised a pre-program for that, to give opportunities to try lots of different industries and see if you like them. And then when you find the one you like, that's when you might go on to another provider to do the full supported internship. So we consider that a kind of step in between. So our study program, typically 2 years to complete a level 1 qualification. Because we're in Lambeth, we stick to the same term dates as Lambeth schools. So if your youngster is at the school in Lambeth at the moment, then those dates should stay really familiar. What we do always have is small class sizes. We have no more than 8 students in a class, and each classroom is always supported by the subject tutor and a team of learning support assistants. So our study program options for level 1 are floristry, retail and horticulture, which our students tend to refer to as gardening, which makes it sound like it's very casual, but it isn't. It's still a level 1 qualification, and we use City and Guilds for as our qualifications board. A student's timetable will also include maths and English, computers or ICT, and employability. And if it's in their plan, access to speech and language therapy and art therapy as well. We also have more to offer, not just with the formal learning, but there's also what we call enrichment, which is more informal learning opportunities just to try something new and just expand your horizons. So at the moment this year, you can choose from things like cookery, sports, drama, music. You can learn how to manage your money. You can do art. You can have a look at what it is to work in hospitality. You can try yoga. Last summer we went camping, sailing and cycling. We've been rock climbing. We've been taking care of animals, small animals, all those different sorts of experiences that enrich life at Roots and Shoots. The supported internship program, or the pre-supported internship program, is as well a full year of work experience and work placements, just to give that broad range of experiences so that you can think about what sort of area you might like to work in, or perhaps eliminate a choice that you now don't like, almost like a suck it and see program. It gives our students a chance to try those different jobs, try different workplaces, to think about their own interests, practice going to interviews, boosting their CV, lots of different sort of variations, or maybe going on then to a full internship. So for example, one of our young people, pre-COVID, heavens, there's such a thing, was having a go at lots of catering type jobs in various aspects of catering, front of house, back of house, and really enjoyed it, decided catering and hospitality was for him, and he now works in the cafe at Westminster City Hall, in Westminster Council's primary offices, on their internship programme with a view to moving into employment there. So a great stepping stone. So if you think Roots and Shoots might be the place for your young person, our placements manager is Matt Brownlee. You can call us, obviously we can circulate these details for you as well. You can call, speak to Matt and make an appointment, or email him. We ask everyone to come in, try a taster session, meet the staff and have a look around. And if you do think then that it's right for you or right for your young person, that's when we would expect a consultation from your borough, in this case Lambeth, to formalise that plan to transition. Thank you so much, Mikey. I hoped I could show you those slides, but I could circulate them if that's okay. I'll pass them over to you.
Yeah, sorry, I was having a problem then. Yeah, that sounds great. If you send them over, Sam, I can circulate them to everyone. But yeah, thanks so much for that. Just to let everyone know as well, I have received emails actually from Lambeth College and Mark Finch, who was from Care Trade. They were both going to join today, and they both said that they've had problems getting onto the meeting. So I've posted the link again. And hopefully they are able to kind of join in a moment. I'm expecting that because they sent emails a little while ago, so I'm expecting that we might have missed them, which is unfortunate. But if they also have slides, I can send them over afterwards. So yeah, thanks so much again for that, Sam. So yeah, Care Trade, we were going to have Mark talk, and Mark hasn't been able to come on. And I also got a note earlier today that that the person from Share Community that was going to come, Karen Miles, wasn't able to make it, which I think actually exhausts all of our options. So in the end, Sam, you are our only speaker. Now what I'll do, I'm going to talk about apprenticeships and traineeships very, very briefly, and I'll open up for questions. If Mark and Diana happen to pop in while the meeting is still running, let me, we'll kind of hear from them as well. But yeah, for the time being, I just wanted to kind of make a brief note on apprenticeships and traineeships before I hand over for questions. But yeah, these are also post-16 options that are worthwhile considering. So yeah, apprenticeships enable young people to work, get paid, and earn a qualification at the same time. Level 2 and level 3 apprenticeships actually enable students with EHCPs to study and get paid at the same time. People may or may not know that there are several kind of instances where EHCPs are ceased when students go to university. They're ceased if they become 26. They're ceased, and often as well, and normally actually, if they go into paid employment, they get ceased. But if you do a level 2 or level 3 apprenticeship, it enables you to earn and keep your EHCP. Now, yeah, while apprenticeships, I've included the government's apprenticeship kind of listing page here, which is a really good resource. But note as well that colleges do also offer apprenticeships. So if you go on the Lambeth College website, you'll see that they have an apprenticeship page. And it's pretty typical for apprenticeships to be delivered kind of jointly by a workplace and setting, normally a college. And in those instances, you can actually still ask that the college is named in the plan, asking for the apprenticeship to be named. So where a young person has an EHCP, you can make use of that ordinary transitions process. Traineeships are another option to consider, like apprenticeships, but yeah, typically last 6 months and are unpaid. Now, yeah, if anyone kind of wants to ask any more about those, they can in the questions, or you can come to me afterwards. But now I am going to hand over to questions. So Anita, Chris, I'm going to ask you to unmute if that's all right.
Certainly is, Mikey. Thanks for that. That's great.
Yeah, no worries.
So, not sure how we want to do this, Anita. Should we just go down the list of questions and see if we can answer them? Mikey, that one might be, that first one might be for you.
Yeah, that sounds great. But just a minute. I think Anita, maybe you're having trouble.
Okay. Yeah, I'm on now.
Cool.
Yeah, nice one, Mikey. That went very well.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay.
So the first, sorry, Lisa.
Yeah, sorry, just before that, because somebody had asked Mikey when you were speaking about Lambeth College, they didn't get the names down, the contacts. So if you could post that in the chat.
Yeah, that sounds great.
That would be useful. Okay, sorry, Chris, off you go.
No, okay. So the first question, which I think is actually for Mikey, is what happens if you're struggling to identify an appropriate setting?
Yeah, I think, I mean, the thing that I would recommend really for young people in that situation come and I can work directly with you and sort of present options and yeah, think about, think through what the options are and help you kind of choose, at least kind of, yeah, give you space to sort of think it through. There are a lot of options out there, so yeah, it's hard to kind of, without having a sort of specific case, it's hard to kind of give specific suggestions, but I'd say, yeah, approach the service really, and we can work with you.
Yeah.
And I think also that your child's or young person's school setting should be doing quite a lot of work around careers advice as well in years 9, 10 and 11. So if they haven't approached you about that, then it might be worth having a word with the school Senko and just saying, what facilities are available for supporting young people with additional needs in mapping out their future plans.
Yeah.
But as Mikey says, you're welcome to come to him, and he will help you talk things through with your young person, have to think about what some of the options might be.
Thanks for saying that, Chris. Yeah, I guess, yeah, it's important to know, I guess, that, yeah, schools should be kind of providing that support as well. So as a first port of call, yeah, you go to the school.
Okay, next question is from Alicia, which is, what happens if a young person's EHCP is not updated every year?
Well, I mean, that stands for all people or young people with EHC plans, whether they're a child or whether they are classed as a young person. This is a mandatory requirement of having the plan. So, this is where, when parents are very active and informed around their child's plan, you're already preempting when that's going to happen. And I think sometimes you have to keep it on the school or the college's agenda and often remind them. I always say to parents that, nobody's going to care more than you. Yeah. And as much as schools and colleges will do the best that they can with keeping up with what should be happening for each child, sometimes things slip. And so you as a parent and the carer, if you don't remember, others may not remember. So I think that you have to prepare for that. Yes, if you know it's coming up, then you need to let or your young person needs to let the college setting or what have you know that it's happening in a couple of months. Can we get a date? And lock that down. It is a mandatory requirement. It must take place. You'll have to remember as well that the purpose of that annual review is to develop that plan alongside your child. And so, what has happened in the past year, what needs to happen going forward. And so it doesn't become of much use if it's still speaking of issues or targets or what have you that were maybe 2 or 3 years old. It's a document that should grow and develop with your child. So there's no question of this not happening. This has to happen, but you will know that nobody is going to be a bigger advocate for your child than you are.
I think, Alicia, what I say from my perspective is that the really key update to the EHCP is at transitional points. So if you are thinking about, year 11 to year 12, that the EHCP that goes to the setting for year 12 for the consultation needs to be the one that it has the most up-to-date and relevant picture of your young person as they present today. All too often we see, where plans haven't been updated, and often that can be from year 6, right, since the last transition. So, Anissa's absolutely right to say, updates should be happening on a regular basis annually, but I think we all know that often doesn't happen. And she's absolutely right to say that unless you drive that process, often, unfortunately, it doesn't happen. But the key is for the transition, ensuring that that plan is as up to date as it can be at the point at which it's used to consult with your post-16 setting.
Yeah,
right.
And I would just say on that as well, Chris, that the types of things that are often missed tend to be in section B around the need, how the need is described. Because you may have had a an ASD diagnosis, you know, when they were 5, and then a plan followed shortly after there. And that initial information that's been put into the plan, sometimes it's still there when they're transitioning. And, you know, often it's been the case where we've had an EHC plan that will still have details around the child's toileting needs, and they're about ready to leave secondary school. Nobody took that information out, yes? And so for whichever setting is receiving that plan, and they then see that toileting needs are still a part of the child's plan, they have to then consider, can we meet this need? Yes? So, and that can make the difference between them accepting the child or not. So, you know, those types of things, you know, so just be aware of the need to check that your child's needs are still as they are described in up-to-date terms, rather than what it was when they first received their plan.
Okay, so Sarah's question's next. We currently live in Lambeth and our child currently goes to school in Lambeth. What happens if the chosen Post-16 path is outside of Lambeth? Legally, there is no problem with that, Sarah. You're free to choose a setting in any borough that you can reasonably feel your child can get to. Okay, so there are no borough boundaries in terms of considering where your child may or may not go to sixth form or college or apprenticeship or anything else. Do you want to say anything else about that? There's not much yet. You can go where you like.
Yeah, I know it's a general misconception. You know, parents tend to think, you know, they have to stay within Lambeth, but you know, Lambeth doesn't offer everything that you may necessarily need. You know, and certainly there will be parents in other boroughs looking over to Lambeth that has something that they feel they need for their child. So that, you know, that allows for people to move back and forth. But there is nothing stopping you from looking for something outside of the borough boundary.
I mean, in fact, the law on this speaks about naming a post-16 setting in England. So the whole of England is yours, but
yeah, you can get there.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, Ellen is asking, what happens if his setting is named but the young person doesn't get the required grades?
So in that situation, I mean, it depends on. Often settings will have alternative courses that they can accept young people onto. So if you're talking about colleges, a young person might have applied to a level 2 course, which has a certain entry requirement for English. Plenty of times we'll see a young person not meet the grades, but then go on to the level 1 course, where they're able to kind of do the English. So there are certain instances where there's kind of flexibility in the college or the setting, and they'll be able to put them onto a different course. Now, if there was a situation in which the young person didn't get the required grades and wasn't able to enter, that would be a kind of snagging point where that the young person wouldn't be able to enter the course, because a young person does need to meet the entry requirements for courses. So if there wasn't an alternative option in a setting, it would be a case, I think, of looking into another setting. Yeah, I don't know if Anita, Chris, if you've got anything to add.
No, I would just say, you know, you're quite right, Mikey. There's sometimes you have to look at another route to where you're getting to. And with regards to getting the right grade, so, you know, if you want a particular A-level course, you're trying to access a sixth form, the setting itself does not have a say over the entry requirements, because it's the awarding bodies, and so they work to those standards. And you know, I would assume the figuring behind it is that where the course level is set, there is an assumption that yes, I guess that there is assumption that the child or young person has studied to a particular level that allows them to access this course. And if they're unable to do that straight away, it might be a longer route where they're going to have to build to that. But insofar as accessing that particular A-level or that qualification, it's not down to the setting. So there's no real sort of wriggle room with that.
Okay, so Janine's asked quite a whole load of questions here. Thanks for that, Janine. So I think we've dealt with the first one, Janine. Can parents or young people choose setting outside of the borough? Absolutely yes. Do we offer advice and support with all age disability assessments and integrated learning disability support assessments? No, we don't. I think we signpost you on to family action in order to support you with those, and we can put the contact details in the chat, or we can circulate the website address in Mikey's follow-up to today's session. We do have access to interpreters for those parents who don't speak very much English. It's often more helpful if they can find a friend that can come with them and do some interpreting, but absolutely we will commission interpreters if that's necessary. And do LAs have an obligation to provide interpreters at annual reviews and translate EHCPs for parents to be able to feed back? That's an interesting question.
Yes, so with that one, as certainly as has been our experience, in order for parents to access the annual review process, the local authority have on occasion commissioned, translators, so or interpreters, should I say. It doesn't happen that often, to be fair, but I know that has been something that the SEND team have put in place where it's been necessary.
And similarly with education, health and care plans. I mean, I've also seen EHCPs translated into home languages on occasion. I wonder quite whether or not the SEN team would feel that they had the resources to do that. I don't think there's any legal obligation on them to do those things, but I think if participation and the parents and young people's voices at the heart of all of these processes, you would hope that schools, colleges, local authorities would be doing everything they can in order to support parents and young people's participation. But I'm not entirely sure there's a legal duty there.
Yeah, I've yet to come across that, but I do, in my experience in annual reviews, most parents have felt more comfortable with somebody that they know in that environment, in interpreting for them, rather than meeting somebody new and you're also in a meeting where you have to pay attention to what's going on, and there may have been stuff happening before you got to the review. Sometimes the addition of an interpreter into that mix might be just a little more than that you can bear at that time. So, but yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Chris. I haven't seen anything to say that that's a legal obligation on the local authority.
Okay, Ellen's made a comment, which I'm hoping she's not going to ask us to comment on, which is our schools are being useless, to be blunt.
I think it's just a comment.
I think I might skate over that one, Ellen, if it's all the same to you. And follows that up with, is it worth going over the whole plan and suggesting changes throughout? Yes, absolutely it is. I mean, thinking back to what Anita was saying about descriptions of young people, liking their teddy bear and being in nappies or whatever it might be, wherever that appears in an EHC plan, it's going to raise concerns for any potential setting. So yes, I would say absolutely at a transition point, you want to be going over the entire plan and making sure that the description in each of the different sections is relevant to your child or young person as they present today. Okay, the legal parts of the plan, the parts that can be enforced at the tribunal, are only sections B, F and I, but you can be absolutely sure that if there's something that a college finds problematic in one of the other sections, they're going to be talking about that in their response to the consultation. So yes, go through the whole plan and make sure it is as up to date as possible. Transport.
So just to come in, you two, I was hoping we could wrap it up by about kind of 5:55. So a few more minutes, and then perhaps we can post the answers to any further questions in the in our follow-up email.
Sure. Okay. All right, well, sorry guys, we've been cut off from me this time.
Yeah, so just very quickly, there was just in the chat box, someone's asking if we can have a copy of the recording. This is actually going to be posted on our website. Is that right, Mikey? That's
Yeah,
what we're doing,
it
yes?
is. So I will I'll post it to the website. Once it's gone up, I will include the link in the follow-up email.
Okay, thanks very much indeed, everyone, for your questions. That's been great. As I say, we will answer those questions that we haven't had an opportunity to get to this afternoon. So apologies for that.
Okay, yeah, all right. And we'll also put the website link in as well. You're on mute.
So everyone, yeah, I was finding our website link, so I've just included that and I've posted it in the chat. So yeah, thanks very much, everyone. I think that's it. That's all we've got time for. So yeah, any kind of further questions, you're welcome to get in touch with the service. I included our contact details in the first slide of the presentation, but let me just put them up one moment more, so that yeah, you've got them should you need them. And yeah, thanks a lot for coming, everyone.
Thanks very much, Mikey. Nice to see you all.
Cheers, Chris. I will. I'll leave the chat open just so that people can take the can take the details and yeah, get in touch if there's any questions.